Okay, well, thank you for joining us today, everyone. If you haven't done so already, please put your name and your title or role, and also where you're located at. Gives us an idea of who's better in the room. Here is a map to help you if you don't know what region you are from, to guide us. It also tells us kind of like where we are talking to, who's signing in, who's joining. So thank you so much. Great. I see a lot of different people from different places already. We have a big group with us today. That's wonderful. All right, next slide, please. So welcome to our workshop on Universal PreKindergarten, or UPK implementation. We'll be focusing this afternoon on working with and supporting our education partners as they consider, plan for, implement UPK and the role of expanded learning opportunities. We'll be giving an overview of UPK information and then having a 30-minute breakout session. And at the very end, we'll have time for live questions and answers. This workshop will be recorded and posted in the ELOP Convening Workshop resource materials. The breakout sessions will not be recorded. My name is Angela Data, and I work in the Director's Office in the Early Education Division in the California Department of Education as an Education Program Consultant. Today, we have a wonderful team joining us. We have Stephen Profiter, the Director of Early Education Division. From the Director's Office, we have Brianne Rude and Sarah Dawson. From the Policy Office, we have Jennifer Osalbo. From the System Improvement, we have Alana Pinsler. And from UPK Implementation Support, we have Shanna Vasquez. Next slide, please. So today for our workshop, we're going to be using Miroboard. I know some of you, if you've been in other yellow convenings, have used it before. It's a fun way to collect information, get feedback, and to answer questions. Let's take a second and we're gonna practice the Miroboard. First, to access the Miroboard, use the link in the chat. Bree's gonna put that in for everyone. Once you click on that, you're gonna sign in with an email or Google account if you don't already have a Miroboard account. Then once you're on the account, you can click on any of the color tiles and type into them. And we have 2 warm-up questions for us today to look at. And to move from left to right or up and down, you're going to click on the right and hold and drag. Thank you, Sarah, for the demonstration. So go ahead and take a second and enter in some information for us. What are you hoping to learn about UPK, or what are you wondering about or want to hear more about, especially along the lines of ELOP? All right, so I can see some of you are already typing in there. That's great. I'm going to pass it over to Stephen to tell us why early learning matters.
Fantastic. Thank you, Angela. And welcome, everybody. As Angela mentioned, my name is Stephen Profiter. I'm the Director of the Early Education Division, which is under the Opportunities for All branch at the California Department of Education. For those of you who don't know us, to orient you a little bit, if you know kind of the expanded learning team and Michael Funk and Sterling and Jen and Josh and Onda and that team, we're neighbors. You know, we work literally same floor. I often see Michael when we're in the office together. We're both in the Opportunities for All branch. So we've kind of relished this opportunity that we both of our divisions have around, you know, not just the expanded learning opportunities program, but also UPK There's a lot of universals and a lot of wonderful things in this budget. So we're excited to be here with you all today to engage, answer some questions. Many of you may be planning, whether it's an expanded learning opportunities program plan or the UPK plan. We're here to provide that support, TA, to determine where else we should be, thinking about our guidance. We're also here to learn from you. But to kick us off today, and before we get into some of the UPK background, we wanted to talk just about why early learning matters. And if you've been in the early education space before, this information likely isn't new to you. But if you're new to early ed, we wanted to share some of the research that motivates us to do our work. So first of all, brain science shows us that 90% of a child's brain growth happens by the time they're 5 years old. It also shows us that early intervention is more effective in terms of cost and health than later remediation. For example, participation in pre-K, such as a TK, leads to statistically significant reductions in special education placement. Also prepares children for school and for kindergarten, has long-term impacts on school progress, graduation, and future life outcomes, and it has enduring benefits that do not fade. So overall, from the research, we know that we get these benefits when we support investment in an implementation of quality programs. And so when we think about that, we're not just thinking, say, like in the TK context where you've got the 180 minutes of instruction, but beyond that, right? And the and kind of the expanded learning kind of part of the day, ensuring that it's joyful, it's not just rigorous, but it's joyful, and we're creating kind of those developmentally appropriate, developmentally informed learning opportunities. Next slide, please. And we wanted to share like another principle that we're operating under as we administer UPK. So kind of one of our guiding principles of sorts is that UPK should be inclusive and when we, in this context, we're saying inclusive of children with disabilities, inclusive of all children, but wanting to highlight inclusive settings for children with disabilities. So to the maximum extent possible, children with disabilities should be educated with their non-disabled peers, and that they should not be removed from regular classes unless, say, the nature or severity is such that, education in regular classes with the use of aids and services wouldn't be able to be achieved satisfactorily. Research demonstrates that enrolling children in inclusive early learning settings can help reduce the need for future special education services, decrease long-term special education costs, and increase student academic achievement. The research also tells us that children with disabilities can make significant developmental and learning progress when appropriately placed in inclusive settings. And that same age peers without disability show positive development, social, and attitudinal outcomes from inclusive experiences. So just wanted to kind of lead off with a couple of principles here, and I'm going to pass off to Shanna Vasquez, our UPK Ed admin, to give a brief overview of UPK implementation.
Thanks, Steve. To help us with this conversation around UPK, partnerships, and collaboration, we wanted to briefly start with a review of Universal PreKindergarten implementation. Next slide, please. UPK stands for Universal PreKindergarten, which by 2025-26 will exist for all 4-year-old children in California. A lot of people think that Universal Transitional Kindergarten, or UTK, and UPK are the same thing. So we wanted to clarify for you how we are all thinking about it at CDE, and how LEAs are being asked to think about it as they work on their UPK implementation plans that they'll submit for consideration to their governing boards by June 30th. UTK is part of UPK, but it's not the only part. UPK is a mixed delivery system that will bring together programs across early learning and K-12. And while it is relying heavily on UTK, it also includes the California State Preschool Program, CSPP, which the CDE operates, along with other pre-kindergarten programs serving 3- and 4-year-old children, including the Federal Head Start Program, subsidized programs that operate a preschool learning experience and are operated by community-based organizations, or CBOs, including family childcare and private preschool. Part of UPK is also the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program that helps to provide a full day program aligned with the needs of parents. As part of UPK, we want to ensure families have a meaningful choice of programs that can support the needs of their children and equitable access to these opportunities. Universal means that by 2025, regardless of background, race, zip code, immigration status, or income level, every child has access to quality learning experiences the year before kindergarten. Statute is very clear that families with 4-year-old children will have the choice on which pre-K program to send their 4-year-old child to. Excuse me. If they would like to enroll their child in a pre-K program, just because a child is eligible for TK does not mean that the child has to be enrolled in TK. They could be enrolled in any of the other programs based on their preferences. Statute is also very clear that LEAs must plan for UPK, including thinking through the other ways that UPK can be provided beyond TK, and how UPK can be made into a full day. This is why CDE is using language around UPK, since just planning around TK does not address all the areas LEAs are being asked to plan under state law. Next slide, please. How does transitional kindergarten, TK, UPK, and P3 alignment work together? TK is an integral program in the mixed delivery system for achieving UPK. It is also the only program that must serve 4-year-old children, that must serve any 4-year-old child that wants to enroll by 2025-26. UPK is a mixed delivery system of UTK, CSPP, Head Start, expanded learning, private learning and care providers, and more that we talked about on the last slide. As we discussed, it provides every 4-year-old with access to high quality learning the year before kindergarten. P3 is overarching work that CDE is leading to support LEAs in connecting the work that they're doing across UPK, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and
Shanna, you accidentally hit mute mid-sentence. So if you could go back one sentence. Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. I didn't even touch anything. So technology. Okay. So UPK is overarching work of CDE. Let's go back to that part in leading support to LEAs in connecting the work they're doing across UPK, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. So there's a seamless continuum for students during their early years in the educational system. P3 also focuses on aligning developmentally informed best practices, UPK through 3rd grade. Next slide. We wanted to show you a visual of UPK implementation that will work over the scheduled implementation period for TK and early admittance TK. To start, it's better to define early admittance TK or ETK, which includes children that LEAs can choose to include in their enrollment, but are not required to include. An ETK child turns 5 during the school year after the TK age eligibility cutoff. LEAs can choose to serve children in ETK if they wish from the beginning of the school year, but the child does not begin generating average daily attendance, ADA, until their 5th birthday. This chart provides a visual based on the birthdays of children and school years across the UPK implementation period. For children who do not qualify for TK or ETK, CSPP or locally funded programs can serve these children, which is labeled Other in this chart. The school year 2021-22 eligibility for TK students turning 5 years old between September 2nd and December 2nd. At district discretion, children turning 5 between December 3rd and the end of the school year can be included in ETK though the district doesn't generate funding for those children until their 5th birthday. Children with birthdays between July 1st and September 1st can be served in another preschool program, for example, CSPP, Head Start, or a locally funded program. In 2022-23, TK students are eligible if they turn 5 years old between September 2nd and February 2nd. At district discretion, children turning 5 between February 3rd and the end of the school year can be included in ETK. Rules for children with birthdays between July 1st and September 1st remain the same. Also this year, ratios are modified to a 1-to-12 adult-child ratio and a class size of 24. In 2023-24, TK students are eligible if they turn 5 between September 2nd and April 2nd. At district discretion, children turning 5 between April 3rd and the end of the school year can be included in ETK. Rules for children with birthdays between July 1st and September 1st remain the same. Also, this year, ratios are modified to a 1-to-10 ratio, subject to future legislative appropriation, and class size remains 24. In 2024-25, TK students are eligible if they turn 5 between September 2nd and June 2nd. At district discretion, children turning 5 between June 3rd and the end of the school year can be included in ETK. Rules for children with birthdays between July 1st and September 1st remain the same. In 2025-26, all children are eligible if they turn 4 by September 1st. Because TK is fully implemented, ETK will not exist at this point. Ratios are 1-to-10, subject to future legislative appropriation, with a class size of 24. For the first time, children with birthdays between July 1st and September 1st can be served in TK. Next slide. Thank you. The CDE has issued a template with required and recommended questions for LEAs to consider in planning for UPK. The template's purpose is to offer planning questions to support development of comprehensive plans for UPK, outline the data that will be required for submission to California Department of Education to meet the requirements of Ed Code 8281.5 through a survey due after June 30th, 2022, and provide additional deep planning questions for LEAs. The CDE has uploaded 2 guidance documents to accompany the template. Some of the information included in the guidance templates are general UPK guidance, information around vision and coherence, which includes ELOP guidance, community engagement partnerships, blending programs to offer support for social emotional learning and development, and supervising young children. All of this information is posted on the elementary page found at https://www.cde.ca.gov/gs/em/. Now I will pass it over to Alana to tell us about support for TK.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to lead us into a section about support for UPK. In order to help support you with UPK implementation and meeting these goals, we want to talk to you about the role of other community agencies and partners as a part of this work. Next slide. County Offices of Education, or COEs or COEs, have a strong role to play in supporting the implementation of UPK. They are receiving funding to support countywide UPK planning and capacity building. Some tangible activities that COEs can do to support LEAs to ensure UPK implementation. It's not an extensive list, but some activities are helping LEAs think through which community partners to engage and how, based on the unique characteristics of the county. Convening LEAs and community-based organizations, or CBOs, to support conversations around how full-day pre-kindergarten opportunities can be provided to all children the year before kindergarten. And potentially supporting county conversations around serving 3-year-old children within their programs. To the extent that more children will be served in TK, that will be more spaces in programs like CSPP and Head Start programs for those 3-year-old children. Next slide. Other supports for UPK implementation are funding opportunities. I'd like to elevate some of those for you. And also just welcoming those who just joined. There is a mirror board in the chat that Angela just put in. Please feel free to use that. For workforce, there's the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant. That's $1.5 billion in funding for instruction and education and strategies for certificated and classified educators. The grant also provides professional learning for teachers and administrators, paraprofessionals, and classified staff that interact with children. There's also $250 million for teachers pursuing or initiating their certification. That's from the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. And then there's funding that goes directly to the teachers themselves, such as the $500 million Golden State Teacher Grant Program. From CDE, we're pleased to have released the Early Education Teacher Development Grant, which is $100 million one-time competitive workforce grant for LEAs as a part of their UPK planning. That grant's due date is on May 20th. There's also other funding opportunities from our partners at the California Teacher Commission on Teacher Credentialing, or the CTC. There's $350 million for the Teacher Residency Grant Program, $150 million for the Classified School Employee Teacher Credentialing Program. And you can find more of those funding opportunities from CTC on their website. I'll ask that we put that in. Beyond the CTC website, you can view all the opportunities that I just talked about and more on our UPK Teacher Pipeline Compendium. This was made in partnership with CTC, and that I asked that Bree put in that chat for the compendium for you now. We also just want to share about a facilities grant, the Access California Preschool, Transitional Kindergarten, and Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program funding. Not sure what the acronym will be for that. That's coming from the DGS department, so I'll ask that Bree put that information out for you as well. Next slide. We want to mention the transitional kindergarten teaching requirements, as this is a big topic. Beyond having a credential that allows the teacher to teach in a TK classroom, by August 1st, 2023, for apportionment purposes, TK teachers must have one of the following. A, at least 24 units in early childhood education or childhood development, or both. These units generally mean Carnegie units, which are from an approved, originally accredited program. Option 2, as determined by the local education agency employing the teacher, professional experience in a classroom setting with preschool age children that is comparable to 24 units of education described in that first paragraph. This is a local decision to determine what the classroom experience is. Thanks, Steve, for putting in the compendium link. Option C is the child development teacher permit or above. So there's a teacher level permit, there's also program director and site supervisor. There's a few different options of how you can get that, and you can also just do a Google search for the CTC's matrix on permit development. Let's go to the next slide. I think we're all ready for our breakout rooms, but we still have a few more things that we want to make sure that we share with you first. Another portion of the workforce to consider are those who are serving children within the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, or ELOP. And there are a few questions already on the mirror board regarding this. So for fiscal year 21-22, statute requires LEAs to offer ELOP to all transitional kindergarten, that's TK, through grade 6 classroom-based unduplicated pupils to provide program access to at least 50% of enrolled TKK through 6 classroom-based unduplicated pupils. Starting in 22-23, that's next year, LEAs receiving ELOP funding must meet all TKK through 6 requirements, which includes offering a minimum of no less than 9 hours of combined instructional time and expanded learning opportunities per instructional day for all students in TKK through 6. Once that requirement is met, an LEA may then exceed the requirements of serving additional grade spans and/or expanded hours of programming. TK is included in the requirement because TK is operated as a program within kindergarten. It's considered the first year of a 2-year kindergarten program. The average daily attendance generated by TK students is included in ELOP entitlement calculation, so LEAs are receiving funding for their TK unduplicated students. There is a frequently asked questions page that the ELE program has made available. I'm going to ask that Bree put that in the chat for us. If you have any further questions regarding the ELOP program requirements, the Expanded Learning Division staff can also be reached by email, but you're also here on a whole convening about it, so you probably already have that email. I'll also just quickly highlight about the student to teacher ratios. For transitional kindergarten and TK students in that class, it'll be a 10-to-1. And for 1st to 6th, that's a 20-to-1. We do see that there is a question about which is the ratio to follow. That is a question for our ELOP friends. And if we happen to find that, oh, we might actually already have that answer. Oh, our team is so good answering. So ratios for TK classrooms are 1 adult to 12 children for 2023 and may reduce to 1 to 10. Oh, I see. The question was about which one are you going to follow? Is it 10-to-1 or 20-to-1 if you have TK kids in there? If you have TK kids, it would be 10-to-1. We want to confirm that with our ELOP partners. So we have taken that back. We recognize we want to get you an answer to that. Next slide, though. All of that context in mind, let's discuss models for layering programs to meet family needs. Next slide. A key part of providing UPK is providing full day and full year programs that meet family needs, especially for working families. Statute requires LEAs to plan on how all 4-year-old children in their attendance area will have access to full day programs in the year before kindergarten that meet the family needs. These needs can be met in a variety of program standards for rich learning environment and care. That includes TK, CSVP, Head Start, and other learning and care programs, expanded learning, private preschool, and more. Having different UPK models builds capacity to provide high quality programs to support child outcomes and allows family meaningful choice when also providing equitable opportunities. To do this, you'll find it really important to meaningfully engage with community agencies and partners, creating strong collaborative relationships to assist in local planning and implementation efforts and to meet those unique needs of the community while uplifting equity for all access to children. Next slide. At the guidance at the end of focus area A, including funding sources that could be used for providing or assisting with extended learning care services outside of TK instructional day, let's provide a list of programs with funding available to help with UPK implementation and planning. So there's TK, which is as you know, one of the main programs for UPK. There's CSVP expansion and existing contracts. There's expanded learning programs like ELOP or ACES. The Every Student Succeeds Acts or ESSA funds, which are federal dollars to support equal opportunities for students. There's community schools, which investments will help you think about how to support a holistic experience that supports students so they can best learn. and community school investments are a key part that can be integrated into UPK planning and implementation. Universal Meals Program. California is the first state to implement a statewide universal meals program for all students. And subsidized childcare funding, all of which are administered by our partners at the California Department of Social Services. As you look at these different sources of funding, you can plan in such a way that isn't siloed, and you want it to be coherent so that you can leverage skills and knowledge and experience of your internal as well as your external partners. For more information about those funding opportunities, you can go to page 80 of the UPK guidance in volume 2. I'll ask that Bree put that in the chat. Next slide. In order to think about layering to achieve a full day of UPK that meets the needs of families, it's important to understand that definitions of part day and full day for TK. So part day is a minimum of 3 hours and no more than 4 hours as obstructions full day, including recess, if under the jurisdiction of a certificated employee, and excluding lunch for a total of 36,000 instructional minutes over a school year. These programs provide the ability to stack classes with 2 sessions per year to serve more children with limited facilities. Full day is more than 4 hours a day if they're operating as a part of an early primary program, as defined in Ed Code section 8971. You can learn also more about that in the UPK guidance volume 1 on page 661. Perhaps, Bree, you can put in a link to the California Educators Togethe document, which also has where all of our guidance is. And Jennifer also just found the guidance itself. Thank you. These programs are supportive of working families and to maximize student learning opportunities. Providing a full day can be accomplished through partnerships with CSPP and Head Start, expanded learning programs, and other learning and care programs. As a reminder, it is allowable for LEAs to operate kindergarten programs that have a different length of day other than TK programs, if they operate in an early primary program. This means that children in TK can have longer day than kindergartners if that meets the needs of the family. In UPK planning for governing boards, LEAs are required to plan for full day learning programs that meet the needs of the parents. If LEAs have an expanded learning opportunity program funds, full day means at least 9 hours of service. And the 9 hours is inclusive of TK school day hours. So if TK funds are only going to support part day TK, LEAs will need to think about through as a part of their plan which other funding sources that they're going to need to leverage in order to get to full day to meet the needs of families, which as required by the UPK plan by June 30th of this year for their governing board. Next slide. Let's dig deeper into how to choose different models of service delivery for UPK that complements TK investments. CSPP and Head Start programs can provide additional funding, but they are income eligible programs, so they may need to lead to a segregation of low income families if they're standalone programs. Both of these programs can be standalone, braided together, or each braided with TK programs. If they're braided in either way, CSPP has requirements such as the Early Childhood Environment Rating Scale, ECHRS, and the Desired Results Developmental Profile, DRDP, and that applies for CSPP programs. Head Start grants include funding professional development. If braided, that could benefit the TK staff. If there are comprehensive Head Start performance standards, for example, such as the Classroom Assessment Scoring System or CLAS, and would have to be conducted by an external source each year. And now you might be done hearing my voice. So I'm going to ask Angela to come back to lead us to our next space.
Thank you, Alana. That was great. So now we're going to move into our breakout session. In a moment, you guys are going to be put into breakout groups, and they're already pre-made. So all you have to do is click on the join room. So don't worry about that. Please utilize the mural board to share thoughts, ideas, solutions, and concerns. Each breakout room has been assigned a facilitator. Jennifer, Alana, Shauna, or myself will be there to help you through the discussion. We have a couple topics for you guys to think about and share as a group. One of the topic is, where are you in your UPK planning? Are there any issues or concerns that you have around UPK planning and implementation? And your facilitator can also help to put those onto the mural board, and we can try to get a lot of those answered today at the live Q&A. And then the second discussion item would be, where are you in integrating ELOP into your UPK plans? And please feel free to share any ideas and solutions. We love solutions to colleagues as you're sharing out today. And we're going to come back around 2:15. So just keep eye on the time, and you'll see a little warning right before you have to come back to the main group. All right, Sarah, can you go ahead and send them to their breakout rooms? Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had an enjoyable breakout session and that you got to speak with other people about their plans moving forward around UPK and ELOP planning. Now we're going to kind of move into our Q&A session, and this is live Q&A. And, you know, we have Stephen here, and he's the director of the Early Education Division. Take advantage of having a chance to fire some good questions at him and get some good answers. We did have a couple questions that I saw in the chat that I kind of moved over to the Miro board. Please make sure that you, if you can, put your questions into the Miro board, because if we run out of time, we'll still be able to answer those questions or look into those questions later. So the first question was TKK combo question. In a combo class, will they need to abide by the TK ratios, 12:1, 10:1, or will ratios be proportional to how many TK versus kinder students they had? And I believe Alana kind of answered a little bit of that question already.
Yes, and I think the bigger question that we want to make sure our ELOP partners and in the extended learning division speak to is which ratio. Is it going to be the stricter ratio because you have one TK kid? Or I think that was the question, and I don't want to speak to a unconfirmed response because we want to ensure that we're giving you the correct response.
Okay, great. And then the next question I have is funding the same for an LEA school that offers full day versus half day TK? Steve, would you like to take that question?
It looks like we lost Steve.
Yeah, I think he
We
might have
lost Steve. Well then, that's great.
maybe Shayna. Shanna might know that one.
Shanna, do you want to take that question?
The funding one, in terms of the funding of programs, I am not 100% certain. We can take that one back as well and double check on that answer for you.
And we can take these questions back and get them answered. And a lot of questions that we do get at CDE, we do kind of have to look through them because we want to give accurate information. And a lot of questions that we get during these webinars and workshops, we take back and we put in our FAQs so that they can later be answered for other people because they have those same questions that you are having. Okay, let's see if there's any more from the Miro board that I can pull out. Or if you do have another question, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. Okay, let's see. Will community-funded districts receive additional funding for TK since we do not receive ADA for our students? So I know we've been addressing this question in our office hour a lot because it's kind of one of those unmandated. Is there someone that would be willing to take this on? Jennifer, do you have a little more information on this one?
I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay.
So I can bring that back about getting funding for community districts.
All right. And once Steve joins back on, I've just messaged him to come back and help us out. And he might have had a bad connection. We can ask him these questions.
Oh, I did get an answer though, Angela, for the TK. If they're doing a part day TK or a full day TK, the ADA is the same. If they were asking about TK funding. If they're asking about ELO funding, I am not sure. And so we could take that back. If whoever asked that wants to provide clarification on if they're talking about funding for ELOP or if they're talking about funding for TK. but the ADA funding for TK part day and full day is the same.
Great. And the next question I see here is, can students in ETK be enrolled in ELOP and be counted? And it's my understanding that with ETK students, when we're talking about TK, they're not getting counted for funding for ADA money until they reach their 5th birthday. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going through the Miro board, and some of them are very teeny tiny, so I'm having to zoom in to see which one is which and what does it say. I think I've gotten to almost all the Miro board ones that we have up here. Is there questions in the chat, Bree, that we could answer? Or if people want to put a question in the chat, we can answer those.
I have not seen any other than the 2 that were in the beginning, and I put those in the Miro board.
All right. Well, then I'd like to say that we have some time here. So if you want to put some more questions in there for us, we're able to take them back and get you some answers.
I also wonder if we could put the resources again in some of the resources in the chat to make sure everybody, we could go through and reshare some of those to make sure everyone has some access.
I also think what we could do is, I know my breakout group, I had a great team who were kind of giving some solutions and things that they're already doing and ideas. And one of the ideas was they were having a TK camp and, you know, really making sure that it's developmentally appropriate and they're doing the things that they need for their TK students and getting them service that meets their needs. So how about I have Alana, can you share one thing from your breakout session?
Sure. And I was also looking at what are UPK planning and issues and concerns, and it kind of talked a little bit about staffing. That was kind of a major concern, but the underlying space of it was the complications of trying to get staffing on the local level. Sometimes there's unions, you know, some certificated staff, classified staff, those who are providers who could be used as a second party with a second person within the TK classroom, but they wouldn't be under the union. And so it would be a little bit more difficult to try to get into. So it was elevating those complications. You know, our statute doesn't state who that second person in the TK classroom needs to be, as well for ELOP programs. And so there was a question around what's currently happening at the local level, including complications with union, but also recognizing wanting that continuity of care for children, because that's who we're doing this work for. So no answers, but no solution. Although there was one bright program in there who's saying that they were doing a wonderful job, although they have a smaller program. So it's still important to highlight bright spots.
Great. And then how about Jennifer? Would you like to share out, Jennifer, something from your breakout session that you heard?
Sure. So we had a lot of early education CBOs in our group and a couple LEAs. And so we talked about, just like Alana said, the difficulty with finding staffing and how different methods that they're doing is that I put in the Miro board are attending the goodness gracious, those staff fairs. Sorry, Martha, I'm doing a horrible job of sharing what you said.
You can also call on Martha and let her share out too. Martha, do you want to share or add in?
Sure. I just shared how, yeah, we go to career fairs. We're partnering with community colleges and four-year colleges. I know that our preschool director is also applying for grant funds to help support our staff who are already in the system but don't have the qualifications to be a TK teacher yet. So she's applying for a grant to help support those so they can complete their education and become qualified.
Great.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you. That was great to hear. You know, I really do like to hear out all the different ideas that are helping me, because not everybody does it the same, but, you know, we all can, you know, take those ideas and use them in our own way as well. I believe we had one more group.
My group, I had a group.
Go ahead, Shanna.
Absolutely. So in my group, we had a lot of people who were starting the process. They had just found out that they were going to be expanding their offerings to TK and K. And so we talked a little bit about resources and who to talk to. And somebody in the group shared about they went to the current kindergarten teachers and TK teachers that they had in the district and talked to them a little bit about, you know, what it looked like to support those learners and as a starting point. And then we also talked about just even using the planning templates as a point to kind of get your mind thinking around just some different questions and possible because sometimes when you're brand new and you're just kind of starting off in this journey, you just don't even know what to ask. You just don't even know where to start. And that those were really good resources to kind of get started and thinking about you know, some of the things that you might even not even know yet. So we were really talking about just where can we go for resources as we start this process.
Great. So I'm looking at the Miro board and I am just hearing a lot of great things in there.
0965.
That, you know, like are helpful. So if you have anything to add or put in there, please do. Especially, you know, kind of like giving other people's ideas. I think a lot of one of the big things that comes up when we talk about UPK is how are we going to accommodate full day TK? How is that going to happen? What is it going to look like, especially in the different, you know, small, medium, or large districts? That it's going to look different everywhere. And I know that I was in my group and we heard a little bit about like how they were running it. And we actually had a charter school in our group who said that they are only going to have, you know, 2 TK classrooms. They already have figured it out how it's going to work and how they're accommodating their students. And so if anybody wants to share some great solutions that they've come up with how they're going to accommodate that full day of TK, we'd love to have you share out. Anybody want to unmute and tell us what they're planning to do? All right, so I believe we are done for today. If there is no more questions, we'll definitely take those couple questions that we did get back onto the Miro board to get them answered. And we'll put those into the materials for this session so that you guys can go back and reference them. And I believe this is the end of your session for the LOV convening.
Oh, you know what, Angela? Someone in the chat asked, does anyone have a full day TK schedule or routine they can share? So does anyone in the call have that? Does anyone have a full day TK already? And have a daily schedule? Anyone have a full day schedule for TK? And full day is anything more than 4 hours. No? Sorry, Joy, it doesn't sound like that here. We can ask that in our UPK office hours this afternoon from 4 to 5. And if we get that, we can share it in the Susio folder as well.
And to tell you the truth, my son's in a full day TK program, so I could probably get you that schedule and the contact information. I know you guys are all laughing, but you know, that's the reality of it. We have kids too, and they're in these programs as well. And that what makes us so passionate about it is because we want to ensure that they have that high quality education for that full year before, so that they can really be successful and be set up for the years following. So thank you, Joy. Definitely email us and we'll get back to you to give you a sample. All right, go ahead and go to the last slide, Sarah. So again, here is our inbox and questions and comments. So if you come up with any other questions or concerns, you are welcome to go ahead and send it to our upk@cde.ca.gov, and we will get back to you. This webinar will not be posted there. This webinar will actually, the recording will be going into all of the materials for the ELO convening, and you should have access to that after the convening is over and they're all put together. The slides will be there as well so that you can access them for future use. And I really appreciate everyone coming today. And I hope that you got a little bit of information that can be helpful with your UPK and ELOP planning. Thank you, everyone.